Karen had one goal: to prove that the royal guards were nothing more than stuck-up actors in silly hats. She had seen countless videos online of people messing with them, and she was convinced it was all an act. So she decided to take things a step further. Instead of yelling or waving a hand in his face, she did something no one had dared before. She tried to kick a royal guard where it hurts. But what happened next? The crowd outside Buckingham Palace was like any other day. Tourists snapping photos, kids on their parents' shoulders, and the ever-present buzz of excitement that came from standing before one of the most famous landmarks in the world. And then there was her, Karen. A woman in her mid-40s, wearing oversized sunglasses, an expensive-looking, but definitely fake designer bag, and an attitude that screamed, "I'm always right." She wasn't here for the history. She wasn't here for the experience. She was here to prove a point. "They're not real soldiers," she scoffed, turning to her friend, Lisa, who had the hesitant, wide-eyed look of someone who knew this was going to end badly. "Karen," Lisa whispered, shifting uncomfortably, "maybe we should just take a selfie and move on?" But Karen wasn't listening, because her mind was set on one ridiculous goal: breaking a royal guard. She had seen the videos online. People screaming in the faces of the guards, dancing around them, waving their hands inches from their stone-cold expressions. And nothing. Not a single reaction. That's when the idea hit her. They don't react because no one has ever gone far enough. Everyone plays it safe, too scared of the consequences. But Karen? She wasn't like everyone else. "They're just a bunch of stiff, overpaid actors," she said loudly, making sure people around her could hear. A few nervous glances were exchanged in the crowd, but Karen took them as encouragement. "I mean, think about it. If they were actual soldiers, they wouldn't let people mess with them like that. They're trained to just stand there, right?" Lisa, who had seen enough internet fails to know where this was going, swallowed hard. "Karen, seriously, let's just go." Karen smirked. "No way." She pointed at the tall, unshakable royal guard standing by the gate, dressed in his immaculate red uniform, his rifle resting against his shoulder, his massive black bearskin hat making him look even more imposing. "I'm going to get a reaction," she declared. Lisa paled. "What are you going to do?" Karen grinned mischievously. "Something no one has ever dared." The crowd had already shifted their attention toward Karen, some subtly filming, others just watching with the kind of morbid curiosity that came with knowing disaster was about to strike. Karen squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. "I'm going to kick him in the crown jewels," she said, loud enough for at least a dozen people to hear. Gasps, a few murmurs. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh, she's about to learn today." Lisa's jaw dropped. "Are you insane?" Karen ignored her. The royal guard, still motionless, unshaken, indifferent. Karen took that as a challenge. She positioned herself just a few feet away from the guard, swaying slightly, as if she were stretching her leg. Lisa grabbed her arm. "Karen, don't." Karen shrugged her off. "Relax. He's not going to do anything. He's not allowed." Lisa wasn't convinced. Neither was the crowd, which had grown significantly, phones now lifted, people whispering, some barely holding back laughter. Karen didn't care. This was her moment. She lifted her leg, swung her foot forward, and that's when everything changed. Karen's foot shot forward, her face already smug with premature victory. She expected nothing to happen, expected the guard to do what they always did, stand there, motionless, enduring whatever nonsense was thrown their way. She thought she was about to become a legend, the first person to ever get a royal guard to break. She was so wrong. Because the moment her foot came within inches of its target, the royal guard moved, and he moved fast. Thump! The sound of a boot slamming against the pavement echoed through the square, louder than any of the murmurs, the whispers, the barely contained laughter of the crowd. Karen's foot never made contact, because before she could even register what was happening, the guard took a single powerful step forward. The shift in his stance was immediate. His rifle tilted slightly, not in a way that threatened violence, but in a way that made it clear she had just entered a world she didn't belong in. And then, "Stand back!" The command was deafening. A deep, booming voice that didn't just come from his throat. It came from years of military discipline, from a history of protecting the monarchy, from a force Karen had grossly underestimated. Her foot never reached its destination. Instead, she was knocked off balance by sheer shock, her own momentum sending her stumbling backward, arms flailing wildly. She had expected a lifeless statue. What she got was an immovable force. The energy shifted instantly. The crowd, once buzzing with amused anticipation, had turned. They weren't cheering her on anymore. They were watching her fall apart. Someone in the back howled with laughter. A man, near the front, still recording, whispered, "Oh, she just messed up bad." Lisa, who had been trying to stop this train wreck from happening, covered her face with her hands. Karen, now staggering to regain her balance, looked around in confusion. The reality of her failure was sinking in. But the worst part? The royal guard wasn't even looking at her. His face remained unreadable, expression unchanged, like she had never even existed. And somehow, that was worse than being yelled at. Karen tried to laugh it off, waving her hands like she had just been playing around. "Geez, calm down," she muttered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "It was just a joke." No one bought it. The moment had already spiraled out of her control. People were still filming, whispering, pointing. Someone muttered, "Instant karma." Another person laughed. "Shouldn't have tested the king's guard." And Karen? She felt the weight of all of it, the embarrassment, the failure. But the worst was yet to come, because now security was getting involved. Karen had spent her whole life getting away with things, cutting in line, complaining her way into free meals, making employees bend over backward to cater to her every ridiculous demand. She thought she could push any boundary without consequences. But today, she had just hit a wall, a 6-foot-tall, highly disciplined, rifle-wielding wall of absolute authority. And now, as she stumbled backward, her face flushed with humiliation, she realized she wasn't in control anymore. The royal guard had taken that from her, without even acknowledging her existence. Karen had expected anger, maybe a stern scolding, maybe a security guard rushing over to mediate the situation. What she hadn't expected was complete and utter indifference. The royal guard had already reset. His rifle, which had shifted ever so slightly, was now locked back into position. His eyes, which had never truly looked at her, were back to staring straight ahead, as if she had never even existed. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Because in that moment, Karen realized she wasn't a threat. She wasn't a nuisance. She wasn't even a minor inconvenience. She was nothing. And the crowd? They knew it too. At first, Karen thought she still had a way out. She could just laugh it off, maybe throw in a few lines about how the guard overreacted. But then she heard it. The snickering, the whispers, and then the laughter. Not with her, at her. "Oh my God, did you see how fast she backed off?" Someone laughed. "She really thought she could get away with that," another voice added. The comments kept coming. "I've never seen karma work so fast." That step forward had more authority than her entire life. She tried to mess with a soldier and got humbled in seconds. Karen's face burned. Lisa, her so-called friend, had completely backed away, shaking her head in embarrassment. Karen opened her mouth to say something, anything, but it didn't matter. She had already lost. And then, it got worse. From the corner of her eye, Karen spotted it. A Metropolitan Police officer making his way through the crowd. Tall, serious, radio on his vest crackling as he approached with purpose. Karen's stomach dropped. She tried to turn away, pretend she was just another tourist, but it was too late. "Excuse me, miss." His voice was firm, controlled, just like the guards. Karen turned, plastering on her best misunderstood victim expression. I didn't do anything wrong," she said quickly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "You just attempted to assault a member of the Royal Guard." Karen let out a nervous laugh. "It was just a joke." The officer's expression didn't change. "Step over here, please." The crowd oohed. Phones were still recording. And Karen? She had officially gone from tourist to international embarrassment. Karen's stomach dropped as the Metropolitan Police officer stared her down. This wasn't a mall security guard telling her she was too loud. This wasn't a customer service worker trying to calm her down after she threw a fit about a coupon. This was a real officer of the law. And the way he looked at her, like he had seen 100 Karens before and wasn't impressed, made her heart pound. "Step over here, please," he repeated. The crowd was completely silent now, but the cameras were still rolling. Karen swallowed hard. She had two choices. One, make a scene, try to argue her way out of it, demand to speak to someone in charge, insist it was just a joke. Two, comply. Accept that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life and pray that whatever was about to happen wouldn't end up on every news site by morning. For the first time in her life, she chose second option. As the officer led her away, Karen could hear the whispers from the crowd. People snickering, some mocking her under their breath. But the worst part? Lisa, her so-called friend, wasn't even defending her. In fact, she was slowly backing away, pretending like she had never met Karen in her life. Karen shot her a desperate look, hoping for some kind of help, an excuse, anything. But Lisa just gave her a small shrug as if to say, "You did this to yourself." Karen ground her teeth. She wasn't used to this. She was used to being feared, getting her way, making people bend to her will. But here, she had no power. No demands would work here. No empty threats would save her. She had tried to embarrass a royal guard, and instead, she was the one being humiliated. As she was escorted past the very man she had tried to attack, Karen did something she hadn't done all day. She looked up at him. The royal guard hadn't moved an inch. Still standing there, rifle held with absolute precision, eyes fixed forward, as if she had never existed in his world. Karen, once so eager to break him, now felt tiny in his presence. For a fleeting moment, she considered saying something. Maybe an apology. Maybe a final insult to save her pride. But she knew it wouldn't matter, because he would never acknowledge her. And that was worse than anything else. As Karen was led away, the silence broke. The laughter came back in full force. She really thought she could kick a soldier. Karen sat in the back of the police holding area, her arms crossed, her face flushed with embarrassment and barely contained rage. She wasn't under arrest, not yet, at least, but she had been detained long enough for the consequences of her actions to truly sink in. She had spent her whole life bulldozing through people, getting her way through sheer force of will and entitlement. But today, she had picked the wrong fight. And now, as she anxiously refreshed her phone, reality hit her harder than the guard's booming voice had. She was already going viral. By the time the officer let her go with a stern warning, Karen's phone was buzzing nonstop. Text messages, social media notifications, missed calls. Her name wasn't trending, yet. But the video? Oh, the video was everywhere. She clicked on one of the links a friend had sent, her heart plunging into her stomach as the clip played. There she was, smug, overconfident, about to deliver the kick heard round the world. And then, the royal guard stepped forward, the booming command, the absolute instant regret written all over her face, the stumble, the laughter, the walk of shame. She quickly scrolled through the comments, her hands trembling. They were brutal. She thought she was untouchable. Turns out, so are the royal guards. Every major meme page had already picked it up. People had remixed the video, slowed it down, added dramatic music, and even made side-by-side comparisons with historical battle reenactments. Karen had thought she would be the first person to break a royal guard. Instead, she had just made him more legendary than ever. Karen's face burned. She had lost. Not just the fight. Not just the respect of the crowd. She had lost control of the narrative. And now, the world was about to watch her downfall on repeat, because the worst was yet to come. The internet was waiting, and Karen was about to become famous for all the wrong reasons. For the next few weeks, Karen's name became a punchline. Random strangers tagged her in videos of military discipline. People posted GIFs of the guards' step forward, calling it the most powerful move in history. Late-night talk shows mocked her. Even major news networks picked up the story, some treating it as a lighthearted reminder of why you don't mess with the royal guard, others using it as a cautionary tale of entitlement gone wrong. Karen tried to defend herself. She tried posting a video explaining how it was all just a joke, how people were overreacting. But no one cared, because the internet had already decided. She wasn't the victim. She was the lesson. And worst of all, the royal guard never even acknowledged her existence. He had already moved on. And now, she had to live with the fact that she would never outlive this moment. Because on that day, she didn't break the guard. The guard broke her.